Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you certainly already know that this is my deep dive into an expansive, expanding, challenging deck called the Egyptian Tarot by C.C. Zane and the Brotherhood of Light. And just in case you are new here, let me give you a brief rundown of what I'm doing. Every night before I go to bed, I riffle shuffle my color mass market version of the Egyptian Tarot by C.C. Zane, and I draw a daily draw card. I shuffle a question into the deck, and the question I use is, what would I benefit from giving attention to the next day? And so I pull my daily draw, and then I pull the matching card from my very out-of-print charcoal gray and white deck, the same deck, the Egyptian Tarot, by the same C.C. Zane. And I look at the differences, see what I see in the cards. It's a little bit easier to see the images in the modern version because the lines are very crisp, but sometimes there are differences in the cards. Not only the line work, but also the numbers of stars or other elements could be a little bit different. The way the faces are drawn. There are differences. And so I look at those differences and then I ask for help. I ask my new favorite deck, the Tarot of the Holy Light by Christine Payne-Towler. I ask it for help. And how do I get that help? I do a 3-card spread. I shuffle and I pull out the first card being the significance of the card of the day for me for that day. The second card being the challenge, which could be a positive challenge or a negative challenge. And the third card being advice. So that's what I do. And then I go to sleep and I wake up the next day, I live my day, and then at the end of the day, I do my analysis of the spread and the card, and I see where those associations, those significances appeared for me or may still be hiding in the shadows from me, not yet appraised by me. So that's where we are today. That's where we are right now. Then I am doing the video. So I've got the daily draw card all prepared for you. Let's take a look at it right now. You just saw the card, right? And frankly, when I pulled that card, I was fairly excited. Who wouldn't be excited by seeing the Magus as their daily draw card for the day? And so let me show you the cards right here. Here it is, the Magus, both in the modern, still available color version of the Egyptian Tarot and the out-of-print charcoal gray and white deck. And you can see there are some differences. Yeah, the faces are drawn a little bit differently. The clothes of the Magus are drawn differently. Even the bird in the box seems a bit different. The bird in the box on this side looks more like a pelican to me, whereas this one, I think, is it that way? Yeah, this one looks more like an ibis to me. Maybe just because of the position of the head, yeah? But we've still got the priestly figure standing in front of a box. I assume the tools on top of the box for both cards are the same, although it's a little bit more difficult to see those tools in this card. We have the priest holding up a wand. We've got this star shooting through the sky. When you wish upon a star, right? And again, there are the tools on top of the table that are, well, actually, you know what? I don't think the tools well, maybe they are the same. I mean, we do have a cup, we do have a coin, and we do have a sword on both cards, but it's really, really hard to see in my charcoal gray and black deck, whereas it is much easier to see the cup, the coin, and the sword in the mass market. Well, there were both mass market, but in the one that's still available, the color version. Okay, so the Magus. What's up with that? Well, we can see a couple of things. One of them being that the planet is Mercury, right? Mercury, the trickster, the clever one, the transmitter and the passer of messages, the healer, the communicator. So the planet, the association for this card in this deck is Mercury. And we can also see the Aleph down here at the bottom, right? Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew Aleph, of the Hebrew alphabet. So what does that all mean? So first, Mercury is of course attributed to Magus, and through this card we have the vital mercurial attributes shining upon us and through into our natal charts, into the situation that we are experiencing or asking about. We also see the Aleph there being the first letter and associated with cows, I believe. The first letter of the runic alphabet, yeah, Futhark, the elder Futhark, is Fehu. Fehu is a card associated, that's card, it's a character associated with the ox and wealth, but wealth in the sense of something that needs to be maintained, like the plowing of fields, and that plowing of fields being a symbol of and an expression of one's wealth and the creation of wealth and the maintaining of wealth. And it's the first letter in the alphabet, so you could say it contains all the rest of the alphabet. It's the launching point for communication. So what are some things that we associate with the Magus, or in other decks, the magician? Well, first is will, right? The Magus, the magician, is the one who uses their will to manifest. Or destiny, the one who begins their journey of destiny, their destined journey through life. Because many of us see the Magus as the one who is placing their feet on, taking their first steps on their new journey through the major arcana. We also get the idea of gain through persistence in this card in this deck. Mind over matter, which is a common attribute of the Magus or the high priest, right? Mind over matter, mind creates. It also suggests that we might want to take the initiative and that we can have faith in a higher power because we have not lost our perception of the connection that we have with our higher power, because we've just started to enter into the material world, and so we still feel that bond, and so we can have faith much more easily. And we can acquire in this card, and we can win over obstacles. So all of those wonderful things. And in retrospect, many of them I think were revealed themselves for me during the day, although I can't say that I ended the day on the happiest note. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So that is what the Magus is here to express for me and for us today. And so after that, now there's no constellation for me to point to. The bird in the box is interesting, right? If it is an ibis, we've got the idea of wisdom and sacred knowledge. If it's the pelican, we got the idea of sacrifice and feeding for one, feeding. Do you know, probably you know, do you know that the pelican was a symbol for the Christ because people in the past believed that the pelican was biting their own breasts and feeding their chicks with their blood. And so that became the feeding of the chicks with the blood and a symbol for Christ, feeding the believers, the Christians, their disciples, and folks following the path, the way of the Christ, with the blood of the cross, right? So it could be that feeding of that sacrifice to feed others, perhaps. But I have a feeling it probably is supposed to be an ibis of wisdom, the bird of the Thoth. And you know, Thoth is the Egyptian god of wisdom, right? So we got all that. And also Mercury is associated with Thoth too, which would be interesting, right? If we think of this card as representing Mercury and the bird here representing Thoth, there's that crossover, that cultural crossover between the Egyptians and the Greeks. And of course, we also have Mercury is also Hermes, and Hermes Trismegistus The threefold Hermes is the alchemical being that teaches the alchemical wisdom and passes the Egyptian alchemical wisdom on to the following generations. So there's all of that potential information that is revealing itself through this card. So that's why I was excited to get this card, frankly. And then I pulled my 3-card spread to help me unpack that card. Let me show you those 3 cards right now. I have to admit, I was pretty jazzed when I got these cards as the unpacking of and the explaining of the Magus card for me for today. They were all upright, and not all upright cards are yay team. Some of the reversed cards are actually the yay team, and the uprights are, yeah, just watch out, baby. But still, these were all upright, and I was happy to see these cards. I'm always happy to see the cards that reveal themselves for me. But these cards made me think that, yeah, tomorrow's going to be a pretty good day. It's going to be a nice, a powerful day, perhaps. And maybe it was. We'll get to that in a bit. But so in order, you saw that the 3 cards were the 10 of discs, always a gem ball. For me, almost always, a very, very positive card, a card with great meaning and strength and power behind it. The 2 of Cups, a card that I love always. And then the Knight of Cups, another card that I have a fascination with and a desire to become, you might say, which is, we'll get to that in a bit. So this entire video is hold on to that thought. We'll get there in a moment, right? Okay, so let's start with the 10 of discs. What do we see here? We basically see the tree of life, right? A form of the tree of life. And we see that there are the attributions of Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, the 3 earth signs. Because the 10s in this deck are the ones that are the culmination and hold the attributes of all of the signs of their element. That's what I'm trying to say. And so this has all of the earth signs. So the 10 of discs points to Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, which are the domiciles of, in order, Venus, Mercury, and Saturn. A little bit of a bing to Mercury right there, which isn't surprising because there are 2 signs that are the domicile of Mercury. But still, we have Venus, Mercury, and Saturn, from which the fixed, mutable, and cardinal earth vital attributes enter our world. So we're beaming all of this energy, and the associated planets are beaming all of this energy into our lives through this 10 of discs. And we see this radiant, powerful, kind of psychedelic looking tree of life, don't we? Does it look psychedelic to you as it does to me? Reminds me a little bit of, what's his name? Max. Peter Max. Reminds me a little bit of a Peter Max poster. Do you remember Peter Max? Maybe you don't. But still, it reminds me of a Peter Max poster. And so, what's it all about, Alfie? To slide back into that time period, what's it all about, Alfie? This card is associated with castles in most decks. Yeah, the castle built on a hill, so we've got good view of the surrounding territory. We can see when an army is coming to march and invade. So we've got our defenses, we've got our security, we've got a place for us and our legacy, for our descendants, I should say, also our ancestors, but we have it for our descendants. And in Pamela Coleman-Smith's art, we see the wise-looking patriarch sitting in a chair with 2 loyal, happy dogs in front of him, and we've got the family out there, and we see the town or the village, the rather wealthy-looking village, outside of the arches of the mansion of their home, and we also see the tree of life on that card, right, drawn by Pamela Coleman-Smith. So that we got that idea of legacy, wealth, wealth that is to be shared with our people. And it's here too, a place of defense and shelter for a community. Ostensibly our community, whatever that community is, whether it's our families, our chosen families, our friends, our tribe of one kind or another. And that this shared life lends mutual dignity and respect. That's not the shared wealth of the suffering in silence, or yes, I have to provide. This is a relationship of mutual respect and dignity for both the patriarch, the matriarch, the non-binary arc, and all of the generations that are included within that sphere. And this card also reminds us that we can have a healthy, safe, and reasonably stable economy for ourselves and, by extension, those around us. We are at the depths of the ladder, descending into creation, though. The 10 is the Malkut. It's the bottom, the depths of descent into creation. And so there is the potential of perhaps completely losing our memory of and our perception of the eternal, unbreakable connection between us and the rest of the non-physical and the divine. But there is the potential of losing ourselves to Maya, to the and I don't mean Maya like Mayan, the culture of South America, but rather Maya, the goddess of illusion and deception from Hindu traditions. And my pronunciation may be off, but yeah, the illusion. We might lose ourselves to the illusion of physical reality and forget or lose our memory of the truth of the non-physical from which we have come. But here, this isn't pointing really to be careful, you're going to forget who you are, but rather that we've descended this far and now it may be time to start ascending the ladder. Now, because the depths is the beginning of the cycle of rising on the dry way back to Kether, the monad, from which we have emanated. So, however, we can remember that we are non-physical creating its own world, that we are non-physical creating our own world of form, we are never separated from our divine origins, our divine natures. We are the non-physical here having human experiences, right? So this card is here also to remind us that we can remember that at all times, in all places, and always, which is a beautiful message in a very Peter Max kind of way. I love this card. It really is a beautiful card. So here we are. This is the significance of the Magus for me, and which is interesting because remember we mentioned that divine connection here as well, and the creation of matter, the creation of wealth, the creation of stability, the creation of community, which this I think was my call for today. And then the challenge, I think for today, the challenge was not the challenge of obstacle, but rather the challenge of something to aim for, something to reach for, something to attain or become or evolve to. And so what I got for that was the Two of Cups, a beautiful card, like I said. And we see that this is Scorpio, the Scorpio decadent of Cancer. So what does that mean? That means that the Two of Cups points to the Scorpio or second decadent of Cancer and its subruler Mars, from which the fixed aspect of cardinal water vital attributes enters our world. So Mars is beaming through the Scorpio, the Scorpio decadent of Cancer, with the power of its Martian nature. So we also have a complement here. Now the complement being the second decan of what do we call it? Of Cancer. Now, well, being the second decan of the sign, we have a complement here and a detriment when it's in reverse, but here it's upright. So we have a complement, which is the moon in Aquarius. So what does all that mean? Well, the Two of Cups here, just like in other decks, is a card of relationships, right? All kinds of relationships, not just romantic, but also any relationship of affinity or mutual understanding. It could be friendships or co-workers or any community that is that we belong to or that we associate with. It could be a church community, it could be a social community, it could be a political community. But anything to which we feel an affinity, those relationships are also included in this card. In addition to the romantic is not excluded by any means. We're here to broaden understanding rather than limit it. The union of alchemy, it's also the union of alchemically complementary pairs. And I tend to like to avoid things like the word opposites, because that word opposite to me sets up an antagonistic relationship that is not always helpful to our understanding, I think. For example, Mars and Venus are not necessarily opposites in this. Yeah, they can become opposites in the sense of antagonism, but they can also be just complements of each other. And I don't want to actually use the word just. They can be pure complements of each other. People who balance each other out, who match each other, which isn't a conflicting role. It's a role of harmony, right? And that's what this Two of Cups indicates. And I've always, when I see these two beings here, these two non-human beings, we do have two human hands holding up the cups, right? But there are these two non-human beings there. They always remind me of snakes. They remind me of two snakes forming an Ouroboros. You know, the typical Ouroboros is one snake shaped in a circle, and it's eating its own tail, and we get the idea of transformation and rebirth and a portal into another dimension, perhaps. But here, while they still do look like snakes to me. One is a serpent, one is a bird. But that's cool. I mean, my eyes can be wrong. That's fine. We do have the color, right? We have complementary colors, not opposites as in they're fighting each other, but complementary colors. They balance each other out nicely. We've got the red and the chartreuse and the magenta, perhaps. Now, on the wheel, they balance each other out very nicely. And they are each, not wanting to get into the potential sexual nature, but they're both eating each other's butts. They're both eating each other's tails. And from that nutrition, we assume also growing new tails. So it's that endless cycle of eating and recreating, but here rather instead of it being one being, it's two beings. Which is interesting. Is it not? So we have the union of alchemical complementary pairs. And we see that here at the center of the card, there is Mercury. And Mercury is, again, yes, we mentioned both. We mentioned the communicator, the messenger, but Mercury is also the quintessential androgyne. The intersex. The one that has everything in the spectrum all in one body. That is Mercury. Male, female, whatever, all there. And so Mercury is the metaphor for that alchemical union of complementary pairs, all complementary pairs. And so Mercury could be a little bit flighty because Mercury has so many possible ways of interacting with the world, because Mercury contains all of this potential. And so in this card, we also realize that we can contain all of that potential. We can unite all of that within ourselves as well. And we can encounter the complementary aspect of the other, or we can encounter the complementary aspects within ourselves, right and left brain, for example. Head and heart chakras, for example. Moving this way and moving that way, for example. We can combine all of our potentials and realize a vast, limitless potential that we have access to with that unity. A full spectrum of talents and abilities. That's what I was trying to reach for. So when we encounter this card, we also encounter the complementary aspect of the moon in Aquarius. The moon being a summer sign of Cancer and warmth and radiant summer nights, right? Encounters the cold, in the northern hemisphere, the cold harshness of Aquarius in winter. And so this card can also be a reminder for us to not allowing ourselves to be too influenced by the coldness or the harshness of the environment that we find ourselves in. To maintain our sunny internal light and joy and love without succumbing to the projections of others, of the coldness and the harshness projected onto us of others. So we might want to create a porous but safe barrier so that we are not overly influenced by our surroundings or by the beliefs and thoughts of others, that we can maintain our own. All great advice, I think. All great things to reach for. And so, speaking of advice, the advice that I got was the Knight of Cups. And here we see Pisces, right? And it is the domicile of Jupiter. And here in the Knight of Cups, it points to Pisces, which is the decadent of which is the domicile of Jupiter, from which the mutable water vital attributes enter our world. Pisces is mutable water, right? So Jupiter, that expansive, prosperous, abundant planet, is pouring through the emotional Pisces, which is my moon sign. And so what better advice to get to hear for me in this particular reading than to own my Piscean nature, perhaps? So what does the Knight of Cups point to? In brief, the Knight of Cups, yes, is a knight, is a defender, an overseer of domestic peace, certainly. Kind of like Cancer, but this is Pisces. But this knight is not one to compete for higher rank or for privilege or for advancement or prestige. This knight is not trying to beat out the other knights. This knight is here to fulfill their role with depth rather than striving for heights. He rides out to minister to his community. And in some decks, we might consider this to be the mendicant priest riding out to minister to the territories, accompanied by a squire of some sort. This knight leans into wisdom, the wisdom perhaps of Pisces, the wisdom and also courtly culture, and refinement, and kindness, and empathy. All of those indoor skills of the Knight of Cups. And he has a mystical side, right? The cups, the water, is the element of mysticism and the divine and the inner divine, the deep divine. So our mystical side adds to our allure here, which is helpful if we're out there desiring to minister to those around us. So those are all really good things for me to be aware of today. So what happened to me? What did I experience today? Not what happened to me. Oh my God, you wouldn't know what happened to me. But what was my experience today? Well, I got up and I'm feeling tired today, frankly. But I got up, I had a decent night's sleep. I went, had breakfast, came back, and got ready and went to teach my first class. And the first class, we finished basically blocking the script for my lowest level class, their ghost story, which was not easy, but not not overly difficult. And I think we got it pretty well settled. The question is, how much of it will they remember the next time we meet? That's what's got me a little bit worried. But so I guess I Magused my way through that. And then I spent some time writing letters to parents, and that seemed to go fairly easily, fairly smoothly. I got more done more quickly than I thought I would be able to. And so after that, we had a meeting. We have meetings on Wednesdays and Fridays. I went to the meeting after lunch. I ended up having enough time to go and have lunch with my housemate here at the cafeteria. We had a nice lunch together and we headed down to the meeting. And at the meeting, we started planning. We had the general meeting and then the meeting for my department. And in our department, next week on Monday and Tuesday, we're having our final dress rehearsal and our performance of the stories. And so that meeting had a little bit of tension and nervousness around it, about rehearsal space and who's going to have the rehearsal space and how are we going to, what are the schedules and all of those minutiae. But we seemed to get it worked out fairly well. And then I went to my office and thought I'd start arranging some stuff. And then I thought, I want to go check out the performance space that we're going to be using. And two of us had planned to hold rehearsals there today. And so I went down and I wasn't able to turn on the lights and I wasn't able to turn on the computer. And it was at that moment, an unusable space. Unfortunately, my students were not to be going down there first, but another teacher was supposed to be going down to use the space today. And so I messaged a couple of people, and it turned into a much more complicated thing than I thought it would be. I thought somebody would just tell me, oh, the light switch is over there, and all you have to do is push that button, but it wasn't that way. So the head of the whole program came down, and he called other people and they said, well, we're not going to be able to actually turn on the lights, but we were able to raise the shutters, the curtains on the sides of the room so that natural light could come in, and it was enough light for rehearsal purposes. And then he helped me fiddle with the computer on the podium on the stage so that we could get the projector going and check the PPT slides and perhaps work with them in rehearsal, which was wonderful of him to do. And he really took care of me and us. And then he left. And then I went back and I was trying to communicating with the other teachers and saying, this is what's happening, oh, has been solved in this way. And now, oh yes, now the computer's working, all of that. So I got up there and went back to my office and confirmed with the other teacher who was to have that space next, that what the situation was. I tried to do some work and I started getting antsy. I got more antsy and I wanted to get down there and I wanted to get my students from their class, rather than coming up to my room and then going back, then going down to the rehearsal space. I wanted them to be able to go right from where their class is to the rehearsal space during break time so that we don't waste any of that time. And so that wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, but we got it done. I found out, just so happens that their other class was in the same building that the rehearsal space was. And as I was passing by, the door was open and I saw the students. And so I said hi to them. And so I knew where they would be coming out of when it was time for them to come out and then go to me. So I could just go grab them and move them over, which is what I did. And then I asked the TAs if they could help with that. And for some reason, that seemed to be more complicated than they were able to handle at the time. And so I just did it myself. And I got the kids into the room. And then all hell broke loose. The room was too hot at first. For some reason, they had turned on the heat and it was way too hot. In the middle of this really cold winter that we're in, it was way too hot. And I feel sorry for the teacher who was in there before me because she suffered through all of that. My TA came in and I said, is there any way we could turn off the heat? And apparently my TA was able to do that. So the first 15 minutes was still pretty hot, but it cooled down pretty well for us. I was grateful for that. But the kids were just not paying any attention. Now, if they weren't actively on stage, they were effing around somewhere. I mean, they weren't exactly, well, before we began, they were effing around. But after we began, they were just sitting off in the corner and like picking their nose and looking at things and not paying attention to what was going on, which made things really frustrating. And so I'd have to stop and restart and stop and restart, and they hadn't retained a lot of what we had practiced before. I'd asked them to write things down, and clearly they had not written things down. And so my frustration level was building. So we were only, in 1 hour, we were only able to re-rehearse what we had done before. We weren't able to move forward. And so that was making my head hurt. And I'm starting to think, this thing is too long and too complicated for these students, and now I don't know what to do. And that's kind of how I ended my day. So that's why I'm not exactly in the happiest of moods right now. I'm feeling like I'm feeling a little bit of a lack of certainty and faith in the process that I know that the process it'll work out in the end. But man, I just didn't feel it today. Have you ever had days like that? And so then I'm thinking, well, what the fuck? Really, what the fuck? Where the fuck is my Magus? How is this my Magus day? With the 10 of Pentacles, with the 10 of Discs, and the 2 of Cups, and the Knight of Pentacles, Knight of Discs, where's my wonderful, beautiful day that these cards seem to be showing me? And so maybe you've gotten to where I am going right now already. Maybe you've gone ahead of me and you're turning around and saying, hey, wait a second, come this way. But yeah, so really, the beginning of the day was pretty Magus-like. I mean, I was able to do all of those things. I got the theater space ready for our rehearsal. We got a lot of problems solved because I was proactive and I created my reality. I created a space. I've also found 2 other potential rehearsal spaces that, other people had talked about, but we hadn't really confirmed that, there are times when we have overlapping schedules, and perhaps we could use those other spaces that are of similar size, though they aren't as pretty as the actual theater. So maybe that was my mostly Magus day. With this, my security of resources, my security of materials, that I've got most of the stuff that I need, even though I'm also right now thinking that that final group of kids that I was rehearsing with, their props are just a mess. So at the end of the day, I lost my security there, and so maybe that warning of the 10 of Discs was something for me to pay attention to. That warning of be careful of getting too enmeshed in the illusion of the physical. And maybe I lost it a little bit towards the end. And so I'm feeling the ramifications of that. The challenge to use all parts of my brain as I do the work of the Magus, to unite and work with my complementary people. Maybe that did reveal, maybe that I was able to move in that direction a bit. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit overly critical about with my expectations of what I feel like I should have been able to have done, and not allowing myself to pat myself on the back for the things that I actually did. So I fell short of my own my own expectations, but perhaps I also did some movement in this direction, perhaps. And maybe I did do some caring for my community, that community being my fellow professors, my fellow teachers, that community being the students as well. Even though I did get really frustrated with them, maybe the Knight of Cups can be frustrated with the people that he, she, they are trying to help, perhaps. Perhaps, yes. We Pisces people can get frustrated too, right? And I was doing the theatricality of the Knight of Cups. I was doing the courtly art of theater with the Knight of Cups as well. So there's that there too, right? Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. I think this is as far as I'm able to process right now. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? And friends, if you are still here, hit that thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you got something out of it and it'll draw eyes to the channel, as they say. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. I'm trying to do one a day until the new moon in February. So hang on to your horses and hit that alarm bell so you get notification. And so comment below. I'd love to hear what you think about the decks even, or the way I'm reading the decks, or the way I'm working with the decks, or how you work with the decks. Do you have one or both of them? What do you do with them? Let me know. Give me some pointers if you have some. And if you don't have these decks and you want to get these decks, let me tell you that in the description box below, I have links so that you can go and purchase your very own copy of, for example, The Tarot of the Holy Light by Christine Payne-Towler. I highly recommend this deck. It has helped me to expand as a reader, clearly. And if you haven't used it, it will probably help you and your reading as well, if you give it the time and the attention that it may ask of us. Also, the color version of the Egyptian Tarot, the mass market version, is definitely available. The book published by the Brotherhood of Light, The Sacred Tarot, is easily available in modern print, so I highly recommend it. I have a link to the deck, but it's not difficult to find the book either. So I recommend both of those as well. If you want a reading with me, my email address is below. thehangedmaninthemoon, that's a me, @gmail.com. That's a me is not part of the email address. It's just thehangedmaninthemoon @gmail.com. So shoot me an email and we can get you a private reading. So friends, there we are. There we have it. I'll end this video and I'll go get ready for tomorrow's daily draw and the 3-card spread. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.